Admiral Kethavar stood on the bridge of his massive warship and looked out at the stars. His ship was bigger than most cities. Around him, 300 other ships moved through space like deadly hunters. They called themselves the Zephyrian hegemony, and they had never lost a war. For 200 years they had traveled from world to world. Every planet they found became part of their empire. Every species they met either joined them or died. It was simple, and it worked. Kethavar had been part of this conquest for 50 years, and he had seen the same thing happen again and again. The aliens they conquered were always the same. They lived on beautiful worlds with perfect weather. They had fancy cities and advanced technology. But when the Zephyrians arrived with their war fleets, these civilizations always broke quickly. They fought in neat formations that were easy to predict. They surrendered when things got hard. They were soft because their worlds were soft. Kethavar touched a control panel and watched data flow across the screens. His fleet had just finished conquering the Altari system. The blue-skinned Altari had impressive energy weapons and fast ships, but they lived on a world where it never rained too hard and the temperature never changed much. When Zephyrian forces landed and started destroying their perfect cities, the Altari leaders gave up in just 3 days. Before the Altari, there had been the Vexni Empire. They controlled 12 star systems and had laser technology that could cut through Zephyrian armor. But they also lived on garden worlds where dangerous animals had been extinct for thousands of years. When real violence came to their doorstep, they couldn't handle it. The war lasted 2 weeks. The pattern was always the same. Advanced technology, but no real fighting spirit. Beautiful worlds, but no experience with true hardship. These species built their civilizations by avoiding problems, not by solving them. When the Zephyrians brought real war to their perfect worlds, they collapsed like paper houses in a storm. Far away, on a small blue planet orbiting a yellow star, Dr. Lisa Martinez stared at her computer screen in growing alarm. The deep space monitoring station where she worked had picked up something impossible. Hundreds of massive ships were moving toward Earth's solar system. The computer analysis showed they were bigger than anything humanity had ever built. Lisa worked for the United Nations Space Command as a scientist who studied alien life. For years, she had wondered if humans were alone in the universe. Now she had her answer, and it terrified her. The approaching ships moved in perfect formation. They weren't exploring or trying to make contact. They were coming to conquer. She ran through the hallways of the underground facility, her footsteps echoing off metal walls. Other scientists and military personnel looked up as she passed. Their faces showed they had seen the same readings. Everyone knew what was coming. General Adam Clark was in the main command center when Lisa burst through the doors. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had fought in 3 wars on Earth, but he had never faced anything like this. Around him, screens showed data from observatories all over the planet. The alien fleet was massive beyond anything in human experience. "How long do we have?" Clark asked without looking away from the screens. 6 days until they reach Mars," Lisa said, breathing hard from her run. "Maybe 8 days until they get here." Clark nodded slowly. He had been expecting this moment ever since the first deep space sensors had detected the approaching fleet. The aliens had sent a message 3 hours ago. It came in perfect English, which meant they had been watching Earth for some time. The message was simple and cold. "Surrender now and your species will be preserved as a client race. Resist and face extinction." Around the command center, military officers worked frantically to prepare Earth's defenses. Humanity had built space stations and moon bases. They had nuclear weapons and laser systems. But compared to the approaching alien fleet, Earth's military looked like children with toy soldiers. What the aliens didn't know was that Earth was different from all the other worlds they had conquered. While other species had evolved on gentle planets with stable weather and few dangers, humans came from a world that constantly tried to kill them. Earth had ice ages that lasted thousands of years. It had storms that could destroy entire cities. It had earthquakes that split the ground open and volcanoes that could block out the sun. It had diseases that killed millions and animals that hunted humans for food. Every day on Earth was a battle, for survival that had lasted for millions of years. Other species built their civilizations by making their worlds safer and more comfortable. Humans built theirs by becoming tougher and more dangerous. Every human alive was descended from survivors who had lived through disasters that would destroy other civilizations completely. General Clark looked at the tactical displays showing Earth's military forces. They had soldiers who could fight in frozen wastelands and burning deserts. They had pilots who could fly through hurricanes and sailors who could survive in oceans that would freeze other species solid. Every human had grown up on a world where nature itself was the enemy. The Zephyrians had conquered 300 worlds, but they had never faced anything like Earth. They had never met a species that treated extreme danger as normal life. They were about to learn that there was a difference between advanced civilizations and dangerous ones. Lisa Martinez watched the alien fleet grow larger on the screens. In 6 days they would arrive at Earth expecting another easy conquest. They would find humans ready for war on a world that had been preparing them for battle since the day they were born. The greatest military force in the galaxy was about to meet the survivors of the deadliest planet in the universe. Captain Ryan Brooks strapped himself into his fighter plane and felt the familiar weight of fear and excitement in his chest. He had flown combat missions over 3 different war zones on Earth, but he had never fought aliens before. Through his cockpit window, he could see strange ships dropping through Earth's atmosphere like silver tears falling from the sky. The alien scout ships moved in perfect straight lines. They flew exactly the same distance apart from each other. Their formation never changed even when Earth's Air Force opened fire on them. To Ryan, they looked like machines following a program instead of living beings making decisions. All fighters. "This is Brooks," Ryan spoke into his radio. "These things fly like they're in a parade. Let's show them what real flying looks like." Ryan dove his plane toward the ocean, using the Earth's gravity to build speed. The alien ships tried to follow, but they kept their neat formation even when it made no sense. Ryan pulled up just above the waves and flew into a storm cloud that was building over the Pacific. Lightning cracked around his plane, but he had flown through storms like this dozens of times. The alien ships followed him into the cloud, but something was wrong with their systems. The electrical storm was interfering with their shields and weapons. Ryan realized that these aliens had probably never seen real weather before. Their ships weren't built for the chaos of Earth's atmosphere. Scout Commander Zekthol sat in his command chair and watched his sensors with growing confusion. The human aircraft were doing things that made no tactical sense. One human pilot had just flown his damaged plane directly into an electrical storm. According to Zekthol's computers, the lightning should have destroyed the human craft instantly. Instead, the human emerged from the storm and used the electrical charge to overload 3 Zephyrian scout ships. The pilot had somehow turned the planet's dangerous weather into a weapon. Zekthol had fought in dozens of campaigns, but he had never seen anything like this. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving damage reports from all squadrons. The humans are not fighting according to any known tactical doctrine." Zekthul studied the battle reports. Human pilots were ramming their own damaged ships into Zephyrian vessels. They were using their planet's atmosphere, weather, and even gravity as weapons. One pilot named Jake Peterson had deliberately flown into a tornado to confuse Zephyrian targeting systems, then used the spinning winds to launch missiles from impossible angles. On Earth, Dr. Lisa Martinez worked in her laboratory surrounded by pieces of crashed alien technology. The metal was unlike anything she had ever seen. It was perfectly smooth and seemed to repair small damage by itself. But it was also incredibly specialized. Every component was designed to work in perfect conditions with no environmental stress. "These ships weren't built for combat," Lisa told General Clark over the communication system. "They were built for conquering civilizations that surrender quickly. Look at this shielding system. It can't handle electrical interference, and their weapons overheat if they fire too rapidly." Lisa pulled up files on her computer showing the Zephyrian database they had recovered from a crashed scout ship. Every world the aliens had conquered was listed with detailed environmental data. Every single planet had stable weather, low radiation, and minimal geological activity. They were all garden worlds where advanced civilizations had grown soft and comfortable. "Earth isn't even in their database," Lisa continued. They classify planets like ours as Deathworlds, places too dangerous to support intelligent life. They never expected to find a civilization that evolved in conditions like ours. The first major ground battle began in the Amazon rainforest. Captain Maria Santos crouched behind a fallen tree and watched Zephyrian ground forces establish their landing zone. The aliens moved in perfect formations, just like their ships. They wore environmental suits and carried energy weapons that could cut through steel. Maria had fought in jungle wars for 8 years. She knew this terrain like her own backyard. The aliens clearly did not. They walked in straight lines through areas where Maria would never go. They ignored dangerous plants and animals. They set up their base in a low area that would flood when the afternoon rains came. "Rodriguez, take your squad around the north side," Maria whispered into her radio. "Use the poison dart frogs near the river. Chen, you're with me. We're going to introduce these visitors to some fire ants." The human soldiers moved through the jungle like ghosts. They knew which plants would burn the aliens' skin through their suits. They knew which insects carried diseases that would shut down alien equipment. They had lived their entire lives learning to survive in an environment that killed visitors from other continents. Now they were facing visitors from other planets. When the battle started, the Zephyrian forces expected organized resistance. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to be part of the jungle itself. Humans appeared from nowhere, struck with weapons the aliens didn't recognize, then vanished back into the green hell around them. Private Tommy Wilson had grown up in Louisiana swamps. He knew how to move through water that would drown most people, and how to avoid snakes that could kill with one bite. To him, the Amazon was just another hostile environment to master. He led a group of Zephyrian soldiers into a swamp area, where their heavy equipment sank into the mud, and their environmental suits couldn't filter out the toxic gases rising from the water. The aliens tried to call for air support, but their communications were being jammed by the electrical activity of the storm that was building overhead. They had never fought in conditions where their technology didn't work perfectly. They had never faced an enemy that treated extreme danger as normal life. By nightfall, the Zephyrian beachhead was in chaos. Their landing zone was flooded. Their equipment was failing due to humidity, biological contamination, and electrical interference. Worst of all, they were fighting humans who seemed to thrive in conditions that should have been lethal. Scout Commander Zekthul received the reports from the ground forces with growing alarm. His carefully planned invasion was falling apart. The humans weren't just resisting, they were winning. And they were doing it by using their own planet as a weapon against invaders who had never imagined that a world itself could fight back. Admiral Kethavar stared at the damage reports flowing across his screens. In 3 days of fighting, his forces had lost more ships and soldiers than in the previous 10 conquests combined. The humans were fighting like nothing he had ever seen. They used tactics that should have been impossible and survived in conditions that should have killed them. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "the humans have begun using biological warfare. They are spreading their planet's microorganisms into our ventilation systems." Kethavar felt a chill run through his body. Biological warfare was considered a crime against civilization by every species in the galaxy. It was too dangerous and unpredictable to use. But the humans were using it as naturally as breathing. They were taking bacteria and viruses that lived on their world and turning them into weapons. Lieutenant Colonel Steve Harrison led his Special Forces team through the frozen wasteland of Antarctica. The temperature was 40 degrees below zero. The wind was strong enough to knock a man down. Ice and snow made it almost impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. For most species in the galaxy, this would be a death sentence. For Steve's team, it was just another day at work. The Zephyrian forces trying to establish a base in Antarctica were dying. Their environmental suits weren't designed for extreme cold. Their equipment was freezing and breaking down. Their energy weapons wouldn't work properly in the sub-zero temperatures. Meanwhile, Steve's soldiers moved through the ice storm like it was a gentle breeze. "Remember, boys," Steve spoke into his radio, "these aliens come from worlds where the temperature never changes. They don't know what real cold feels like. Use that." Steve's team had trained in environments all over Earth. They had fought in deserts where the heat could kill, in jungles where every plant was poisonous, and in mountains where the air was too thin to breathe. Each environment had taught them something new about survival. Now they were using all those lessons against enemies who had never faced real hardship. Dr. Lisa Martinez worked day and night in her laboratory, studying captured alien equipment and biology. What she found amazed and horrified her. The Zephyrians, and every species they had conquered, were incredibly advanced, but they were also incredibly fragile. They had evolved on worlds where nature was gentle and predictable. Look at this. Lisa showed General Clark the results of her tests. Their immune systems can't handle Earth bacteria. A common cold virus could kill them, and their technology breaks down when exposed to temperature changes that we consider normal. Lisa pulled up a comparison chart on her computer. Every world the aliens had conquered had weather that stayed within a narrow range. None of them had dangerous storms. None of them had toxic plants or poisonous animals. The species that lived on these worlds had never needed to develop the kind of toughness that Earth demanded from every living thing. We're not just fighting aliens, Lisa continued. We're fighting aliens who have never experienced real danger. Their entire civilization is based on avoiding problems, not solving them. In the Sahara Desert, Commander Elena Rodriguez led a unit that had been cut off from supplies for 2 weeks. The alien forces surrounding them expected the humans to surrender when their food and water ran out. Instead, Elena's soldiers had turned the desert itself into their supply depot. They found water by following animal tracks to hidden springs. They ate plants and insects that would poison the aliens. They moved during the heat of the day when the Zephyrian suits overheated and broke down. At night, when the temperature dropped to freezing, they used the cold to their advantage while the aliens huddled in their malfunctioning shelters. These creatures don't understand desert survival, Elena reported to headquarters. They're trying to fight a war in an environment that's killing them faster than we are. The aliens had tried to use their orbital weapons to destroy human cities, but Earth's chaotic weather patterns interfered with their targeting systems. Magnetic storms in the upper atmosphere threw off their guidance systems. Cloud cover blocked their sensors. Even the planet's rotation created problems for weapons designed to work in the vacuum of space. Chief Engineer Danny Kim led a team of mechanics and scientists who had captured an intact alien command ship. Instead of just studying the technology, they immediately began tearing it apart and rebuilding it. Danny had spent his career fixing equipment in conditions that ranged from Arctic cold to desert heat. He knew how to make things work when everything went wrong. Their technology is impressive, Danny told his team, but it's too specialized. It only works under perfect conditions. We need to make it tougher. Danny's team combined alien energy systems with human engineering. They created hybrid weapons that could function in Earth's hostile environment. The new weapons were more powerful than anything either species could build alone. But more importantly, they were built to work when everything else was falling apart. The psychological impact on the Zephyrian forces grew worse each day. They were used to fighting civilizations that surrendered when things got difficult. Humans did the opposite. The worse conditions became, the more dangerous humans seemed to get. When their equipment failed, they improvised. When their supplies ran out, they lived off the land. When they were outnumbered, they used the environment as an ally. Captain Amy Foster shot down 3 alien fighters while flying through a hurricane. The storm that should have grounded all aircraft became her weapon. She used the wind currents to make impossible turns and the lightning to overload enemy shields. To her, flying in a hurricane was just advanced pilot training. To the aliens, it was insanity that somehow worked. The aliens began to realize they weren't fighting a primitive species. They were fighting the apex predators of a world that had spent millions of years trying to kill everything on it. Every human seemed to have abilities that other species would consider superhuman. They could survive in conditions that would kill most galactic life forms. They could turn any environment into a weapon. Most terrifying of all, they accepted extreme danger as normal life. Admiral Kethvar read the latest reports with growing fear. His forces weren't just losing battles. They were being systematically destroyed by an enemy that fought like the planet itself. The humans had turned their entire world into a weapon, and they wielded it with the skill of a species that had never known safety. General Clark stood in the command center and looked at the global battle map. For 2 weeks, the Zephyrian invasion had been falling apart piece by piece. Their perfect formations had been broken. Their advanced technology had failed in Earth's hostile environment. Now it was time for humanity to stop just defending and start attacking. "All units, this is Clark." The general spoke into his communication system. "Operation Lazarus is now active. We're taking this fight to them." Captain Amy Foster sat in the pilot seat of the first human spacecraft, designed for real combat. Her ship was built using captured alien technology, but it had been completely redesigned by human engineers. Where alien ships were smooth and perfect, hers was covered in armor plating and backup systems. Where alien ships relied on advanced computers, hers could be flown manually if every electronic system failed. Amy's squadron launched from Earth's moon base and headed toward the main alien fleet. The Zephyrians expected another defensive action. Instead, they found human ships that fought like their pilots had learned to fly in Earth's atmosphere. Amy used the gravitational pull of asteroids to change direction in ways that confused alien, targeting computers. She flew her ship through the radiation field around Jupiter, using the deadly energy as both a weapon and a shield. "These humans are insane," reported Captain Vextar from his damaged Zephyrian cruiser. "They just flew through a radiation storm that should have killed them instantly." What Vextar didn't understand was that Amy had grown up near Chernobyl. Her grandfather had been one of the cleanup crew after the nuclear disaster. Her family had lived for generations in an area that most species would consider uninhabitable. Radiation levels that would cook alien crews alive were just background noise to her. Commander Tony Wright piloted his fighter toward a massive Zephyrian battleship. His engines were failing and his weapons were empty, but Tony had learned something important during his years as a test pilot. Sometimes the best weapon was the ship itself. He aimed his damaged craft at the alien ship's main reactor and pushed his engines past their safety limits. The alien crew watched in horror as the human fighter accelerated toward them. They expected the pilot to turn away at the last second. Instead, Tony triggered his ship's self-destruct system just before impact. The explosion tore through the battleship's shields and caused a chain reaction that destroyed 3 other alien vessels. To the Zephyrians, Tony's action was incomprehensible suicide. To humans, it was a tactical decision that saved thousands of lives by removing a major threat. Tony had grown up watching war movies where pilots sacrificed themselves to protect others. What seemed like madness to aliens was heroism to humans. Dr. Lisa Martinez made her greatest discovery while studying captured alien prisoners. The Zephyrians, and every species they had conquered, shared the same weakness. They had evolved on gentle worlds where survival was easy. Their bodies couldn't handle stress. Their minds couldn't adapt to chaos. Most importantly, they had never learned to make desperate decisions under impossible pressure. "Look at these medical scans," Lisa showed General Clark. "Their stress response is completely different from ours. When things go wrong, their thinking becomes slower and more rigid. When things go wrong for humans, we think faster and become more creative." Lisa had discovered why human tactics seemed so unpredictable to the aliens. Humans had evolved to make split-second decisions when death was only moments away. Every human carried genetic programming from millions of years of surviving disasters, famines, wars, and natural catastrophes. Under pressure, humans became more dangerous, not less. Major Kate Sullivan led urban warfare operations in the ruins of Detroit. The Zephyrian ground forces had occupied the city, expecting to use it as a base for conquering North America. Instead, they found themselves trapped in a maze of broken buildings and abandoned factories where human defenders used every piece of debris as a weapon. Kate's soldiers turned the city's infrastructure into a massive trap. They used the subway, tunnels to move unseen beneath alien positions. They rigged abandoned buildings to collapse when alien patrols entered them. They even used the city's population of stray dogs and rats as an early warning system for alien movements. "These humans are using their own destroyed city as a fortress," reported Major Klixvan to his commanders. "Every building is a potential ambush site. Every street could be mined with explosives. We can't establish secure positions anywhere. The aliens had conquered hundreds of worlds, but they had always fought civilizations that tried to preserve their cities and protect their people. Humans were willing to destroy their own infrastructure if it gave them a tactical advantage. They treated their own cities like disposable weapons in a way that horrified and confused the invaders. Engineer Ben Collins led the most ambitious project in human history. Using alien technology and human ingenuity, his teams had learned to weaponize Earth's weather systems. They could trigger hurricanes, redirect tornadoes, and even cause controlled volcanic eruptions. What had once been natural disasters became precision weapons under human control. Target acquired, Ben reported as his team prepared to launch a hurricane at the main Zephyrian landing site in Florida. Category 5 storm sustained winds over 200 miles per hour. Their ships aren't built for this kind of weather. The aliens watched in terror as humans created and controlled the same natural forces that had been killing them since they arrived on Earth. A species that had learned to survive hurricanes was now using them as artillery shells. A civilization that had endured ice ages was now freezing alien bases with artificial blizzards. Admiral Kethvar read the battle reports with growing despair. His mighty conquest fleet was being destroyed by an enemy that refused to follow any logical pattern of warfare. Human tactics made no sense from a military standpoint, but they worked with devastating effectiveness. Worse, the humans seemed to be getting stronger and more creative as the war continued. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving surrender demands from the human forces." Kethvar stared at the message display. For the first time in Zephyrian history, someone was demanding their surrender. The message was simple and direct. "You came here to conquer us. Instead, you're teaching us how to travel to other worlds. Leave now, or we'll show you what we learned." The Admiral realized with growing horror that the humans weren't just winning the war, they were learning from it. Every alien ship they captured gave them new technology. Every battle taught them new tactics. The species that had evolved to survive anything was now learning to conquer everything. The great Zephyrian war machine that had crushed 300 civilizations was falling apart against humans who fought like their planet itself. Unpredictably, lethally, and with a casual disregard for what other species considered impossible odds. Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of his flagship and made the hardest decision of his military career. His once mighty fleet was broken. Half his ships were destroyed or damaged beyond repair. The other half were infected with human-made organisms that were eating through their technology from the inside. The species he had come to conquer was systematically destroying everything he had built. "Prepare all ships for retreat," Kethvar ordered. The words tasted like poison in his mouth. In 200 years of conquest, the Zephyrian hegemony had never retreated from any world. But Earth was different. Earth had changed everything. Commander Rick Hayes led the final human assault on the alien fleet. His ship was a hybrid of human and alien technology that should have been impossible to build. Human engineers had taken Zephyrian energy systems and combined them with Earth-built armor and weapons. The result was a vessel that could survive in conditions that would destroy ships from either civilization alone. "All units, this is Hayes," Rick spoke into his communication system. "Remember what we learned from the hurricanes and earthquakes. Hit them fast, hit them hard, and use everything around us as a weapon." Rick's fleet moved through space like a pack of hunters rather than a military formation. Some ships used asteroids as cover. Others hid in the radiation shadows of nearby planets. A few pilots actually flew their vessels into the corona of the sun, using the star's deadly energy to supercharge their weapons while their heat-resistant hulls protected them from temperatures that would melt alien ships instantly. The Zephyrians had never seen space combat like this. Human tactics were chaotic and unpredictable. They used gravitational fields, solar radiation, and even cosmic debris as weapons. Most terrifying of all, human pilots seemed perfectly willing to sacrifice their own ships to destroy enemy vessels. Pilot Angela Ross demonstrated this when she used her ship's gravity drive to create an artificial black hole. The tiny singularity lasted only seconds, but it was long enough to consume 3 Zephyrian cruisers. Angela's ship was destroyed in the process, but she had eliminated a major threat to the human fleet. To aliens who valued individual survival above all else, such tactics seemed like madness. To humans who had learned that sometimes one person must die to save many, it was simple mathematics. Dr. Lisa Martinez coordinated the final phase of humanity's biological warfare campaign. She had created modified Earth organisms that treated the sterile environments inside alien ships as perfect breeding grounds. Bacteria that could survive in Antarctic ice or boiling volcanic springs found the controlled atmosphere of Zephyrian vessels to be ideal living conditions. The infection is spreading through their entire fleet, Lisa reported to General Clark. Their computer systems are failing as the organisms consume the organic components in their technology. They can't stop it because they don't understand how life adapts and evolves under pressure. The aliens had built their technology to work perfectly under controlled conditions. They had never needed to design systems that could function while being eaten alive by hostile microorganisms. Earth life, on the other hand, had been fighting biological warfare for billions of years. Every living thing on the planet was descended from survivors of countless plagues, infections, and biological disasters. General Clark watched the final battle from Earth's command center. Around him, screens showed human forces winning victories that should have been impossible. A species that had never traveled beyond their own solar system was defeating the galaxy's greatest military power. They were doing it by using lessons learned from surviving on a world that had tried to kill them every day of their existence. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "the alien fleet is requesting permission to retreat." Clark looked at the tactical display. The Zephyrian fleet that had once numbered in the hundreds was down to fewer than 50 functional ships. Those that remained were desperately trying to escape Earth's solar system before the biological infections destroyed them completely. "Grant them permission," Clark ordered, "but send them a message first." The message that went out to Admiral Kethfer was simple, but carried a weight that would change galactic history. "You came to our world expecting to find another civilization you could easily conquer. Instead, you found the survivors of a death world. We've learned from this war. We've learned about space travel, advanced weapons, and how to fight among the stars. Most importantly, we've learned that we're not alone in the universe. When we're ready, we'll come visit our new neighbors. We hope they'll be more interested in friendship than conquest." Admiral Kethvar read the human message and felt terror unlike anything in his long military career. The humans weren't just letting him go. They were promising to follow him. A species that had turned their own planet into a weapon was now learning to take those weapons to other worlds. The surviving Zephyrian ships limped away from Earth's solar system, carrying news that would spread throughout the galaxy. The unstoppable hegemony had been stopped. The greatest military force in known space had been defeated by a single world that most civilizations would have considered uninhabitable. 6 months later, Captain Sarah Foster stood on the bridge of humanity's first deep space exploration vessel. The ship was built using lessons learned from the war. It could survive in environments that would destroy vessels from any other species. More importantly, it carried a crew that had grown up on a world where survival meant adapting to anything the universe could throw at them. "Take us out, pilot," Sarah ordered as Earth fell away behind them. The ship accelerated toward the stars, carrying humans to their first meetings with alien civilizations. But these weren't the same humans who had been surprised by the Zephyrian invasion. These were humans who had learned that they were the apex predators of a death world, and that their evolution had given them advantages no other species possessed. As Sarah's ship disappeared into hyperspace, a new age began for the galaxy. Other civilizations had built their societies by avoiding danger and seeking comfort. Humans had built theirs by conquering every challenge their hostile world could create. Now they were bringing those hard-earned survival skills to the stars. Message they carried was peaceful, but every alien species that received it understood the unspoken truth beneath the words. Earth's children were coming to the galaxy, and they brought with them all the deadly gifts their death world had given them. The universe was about to meet its new apex predators.